As I indicated before, I'm Cliff Bentz. I live in Ontario with my wife. We have two kids that we've successfully managed to move out of our home. But my background is in law and in water in particular, but lots of discussion in my law firm over how to manage to get people to work together. And I focused my last 10 years of practice on trying to resolve farm and ranch success and issues. So the discussions about how we come to agreement are normal for me. I also enjoy owning a 120-acre farm that is under the Owyhee Reservoir, and so I have a personal interest in how water is dealt with. And of course, my family, having grown up on a cattle ranch, three of my younger brothers are still involved in that space. I'm now going to recognize myself for an opening statement. Our purpose today is to hear about challenges facing Central Oregon when it comes to water, with a specific focus on jurisdiction, supply, access, and use. It used to be that the Oregon Water Resources Department, a state, not federal agency, had the final say about water. This was because water use was viewed pretty much as a local issue. Local control over water is a really good idea, but I can assure you use of water is no longer controlled by local people. Federal laws such as the ESA, Clean Water Act, NEPA, the Northwest Power Act, and federal court decisions such as the Winters case have pushed aside state laws, leaving executive branch bureaucrats and federal judges masters of our waters. Perhaps reversal of the Chevron case will change things, but federal laws now give the federal government significant, if not final authority, many times over how much and when we can use much of our water. But the final word over control of water does not have to be surrendered to agencies and judges. We are here because it's our belief that with your help and insight, we can develop legislation that returns at least some of the control over water to the state and the people who live here. But if we are to create legislation that addresses water issues, we need to know what has and what hasn't worked in your basin. It's been my observation over the past 30 years that although not perfect, the Deschutes community has usually found a way to deal with extremely difficult water allocation problems. Other basins have not been so fortunate. The Klamath comes to mind, Central Valley in California, the Colorado, the Rio Grande. In these places, we see never-ending multi-million-dollar litigation or severe damage to thousands of farm workers and farmers as their water is cut off, or never-ending uncertainty to when farmers' annual water allocation might be developed, or short-term fixes that usually take big heaps of federal money, a very expensive Band-Aid. To a certain extent, your basin has avoided these slow-moving water management disasters, so we look forward to hearing how you did it. Now, we don't expect our panel to provide instant solutions to the problems we may discuss, but I would ask that members describe the tools they have used to build consensus. Many issues will come up in this hearing, but here are several I hope the panel chooses to address. Additional water from the Deschutes Basin watershed. Your basin is the second largest watershed in Oregon, measuring 10,500 square miles in size. That's almost 7 million acres. 51% of that land is owned by the federal government. Many thousands of those federal acres are overgrown with forest understory, putting the forest, animals that live in it, land, communities, and water at risk. Thousands of trees per acre slurp up groundwater, releasing it into the air through transpiration. Is protection and perhaps even increasing your basin's water supply a path we can use to get back into the woods? Can we help tribes better use their political power to get back into the forest for restoration activities at scale? I am pleased that we have Bobby Bruno of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs here today to address this possibility. Should people in communities whose ancestors were enticed by the government water storage policy to move into this basin when it was a desert be incentivized to reverse course as political winds change and government takes their water away? This basin is facing this issue head on, first of all by recognizing that farmers are being damaged by the ESA, and then by designing means of reducing and mitigating against that damage. Solutions include piping of canals, the HCP, drought relief support, and congressional involvement such as this hearing today. I am pleased that we have Dr. Trish Baxen, veterinarian, owner of Oregon Feed and Irrigation, and Jeff Larkin of Jeff Larkin Realty here with us to discuss the solutions and problems that water demand, drought, and the ESA have brought about. What new tools are available to address water supply and allocation? Will artificial intelligence play a part? I'm sure that it will. not the least in the area of water modeling, adjusting water delivery, and in helping identify new sustainable sources of water. But an obvious opportunity for the use of AI is applying it to sorting out the myriad of water trading and exchange opportunities, which lie buried in the complexities of intra-district mapping, difference in water delivery timing, diversion locations, water right priorities, and on and on. Figuring this out using district personnel would take literally forever, but with AI it could take seconds. And we cannot forget the new satellite and software technology that exists to identify areas amenable to aquifer recharge. Machines which can penetrate some 1,200 feet into the ground using magnetic resonance technology can now pinpoint places on the ground where water could be absorbed. Or use of similar new systems to identify areas of forest most likely to produce more runoff if restored to normal tree numbers. Happily, we have Mr. Pat Gaylord of David Evans & Associates with us today to address some of these opportunities. Finally, let me mention groundwater, an issue the federal government, with very good reason, has stayed away from for years. But that's changed. And part of that change is based on an abject failure of the federal government to recognize that as federal laws, such as the ESA, took surface water away, there would be an immediate and totally foreseeable shift to groundwater. And the link between groundwater and surface water, variable though as to time, is becoming more clearly understood. It's this connection that the federal government is using to force the state of Oregon to regulate groundwater. Indirect and non-local federal management of groundwater is not a good thing and is most certainly not a precise thing. The question is, will states step up to reassert their authority over their water? It's been sad to watch Oregon become an agent of the federal government and used to enforce the Endangered Species Act as to surface and groundwater down in the Klamath. Is this basin going to watch the same thing happen here? You should know that folks losing their house wells to dropping aquifers have been asking if the federal government shutting down groundwater use in Klamath to protect fish, then why doesn't the federal government act to protect domestic wells? I don't think that the federal government should be taking control over our groundwater, but the situation is complicated. We are fortunate to have Commissioner Tony DeBone here to help us discuss how Deschutes County is addressing these difficult issues of local versus federal authority. And I don't want to place all the burden on Commissioner DeBone. I want all the members of the panel to weigh in on these difficult issues. With that, I recognize Congresswoman Val Hoyle for a 5-minute opening statement.